let's go over to Biden. We're going to spend 10 minutes. Every time I say we're going to spend 10 minutes, we usually spend about 15, 20. We're going to spend 7 minutes on Biden, and then we're going to go over to the next part of the show. Biden, we're going to report on this. We're going to keep you all up to date. Continues to remain defiant and refuse to step down despite more calls from people within his own party to walk away from this election. Check it out.
Washington in crisis control mode.
We're talking about the President of the United States.
Guys, I'm trying to answer the questions.
President Biden is working to assure the country and members of his own party that he is the best bet for November.
I've talked to people across Ohio. They have legitimate questions about whether the president should continue his campaign.
Do you think he should step aside?
If I don't go inside, I have people waiting for me, and I'm in trouble.
It's a simple yes or no, sir.
Thank you.
The president appears to be pulling out all the stops to counter impressions that his debate performance was a sign that he's not fit for re-election.
Was this a bad episode or the sign of a more serious condition?
It was a bad episode. No indication of any serious condition. I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instinct.
He was exhausted just doing his interview sitting down. He was taking deep breaths. Come on, man.
In terms of preparing, and I had a bad night.
Today, he held a call with key donors, sent a letter to Capitol Hill saying he won't step down and calling for party unity, and called into MSNBC's morning.
Maybe he waiting for Hunter Biden to get sentenced so he can pardon him. I don't know. Maybe he gonna make sure that Hunter Biden is taken. Who knows? We don't know what the play is of the president of the United States of America. I don't believe that all of these people are selfless. I believe that they are selfish and they do have their own interests that they're working on and that they're focused on, which then feeds into whether or not they're going to continue to try to become president or not. I'm not disillusioned. We're going to cover Trump shortly. I'm not disillusioned. I believe, regardless of how much we are all in support of, and yes, I do plan on voting for Trump this upcoming election. But you are not going to sit here and tell me that in addition to him being the best candidate, in my opinion, as far as what policy is and whether or not he can end the wars in Ukraine, the amount of money that's going outside of the United States, whatever, that he don't also have his own best interests at heart. Oh, absolutely. I believe that Trump also has his own best interests at heart when it comes to becoming president of the United States of America, because two things can be true. 100%. I can get with a girl and then say, you know what? I want to make sure you're good. I want to make sure you're taking care of you in a great space in order for you to be in your femininity. And you ain't got to do this, that, and this, and that, so on and so forth. If you have my kid, you ain't got to work during the first years of the kids going to school until they go to school full time. I could absolutely have her best interest at heart. But that don't mean that I don't have my own best interest at heart too. Absolutely two things can be true. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. But the problem that I have is that they keep trying to sell us on the idea that it's not two things that's true, it's only one. Oh, they only care about you. Okay, then why did they leave the borders open and why won't they address it? Ain't nothing wrong with getting yours. Listen, you can add value to people and be fairly compensated. 100%. It don't have to just be about the people. It could also be making sure that you're not suffering as a result of it also. Sacrifice shouldn't just be one way, but why they selling us like we ain't paying attention and we don't know what's going on? Now, they may not reveal to us what their true intentions are, but I 100% think that there's other intentions associated with the fact that he's still staying in this race. And I got my theories, but y'all going to have to tune into the Anton Daniels show tomorrow. The Anton Daniels show tomorrow in order to see what those are.
Joe.
The bottom line here is that we're not going anywhere. I am not going anywhere. I wouldn't be running if I didn't absolutely believe that I am the best candidate to beat Donald Trump in 2024.
But the question just won't go away. Do enough people have faith in Biden to keep him on the ticket? Or is the pressure from some vocal party insiders growing too loud?
Joe has made it clear that he's all in.
Do y'all know when y'all go to these rallies, a lot of times what they don't show you is that they show the cue cards to the audience to applaud. The people don't just applaud on their own. They be like this. And Joe, he's all in. Yeah. Trust me, I've been to them. I've been to the rallies. I've been on stage as one of the people that was cheering. I remember I used to, one of the people, hold on. What was my man's name? Andrew Yang. I absolutely was one of the biggest advocates for Andrew Yang. I absolutely was championing and pushing for Andrew Yang. I liked Andrew Yang. I think that, and he was a Democratic person, but he actually was one of the people that I supported in the race because I felt like he had a good pulse on where things was going technologically and how that was going to play out in the future. See, I'm not just 100% red. I am conservative, but I'm not just 100% red. I'm 100%. See, I document my whole life. I was on stage right there in the middle. I know how all of these campaigns work. I donated to them. I participate in them. I've spoken to and advocated with people that is a part of certain political campaigns in order to get into it. I know how this works. I know that they throwing up the cue cards. I know where all of the money goes. I know why they go to certain cities. I know how they drum up support. I know what happens prior to the primary in order for them to be able to get into office and then ultimately sell themselves on the general public. I 100% know what goes on. So it's easier for me to be able to speak to these things because I have real life experience. That's what happens when you live long enough. Can't even be a life coach at 26. You got to actually learn something.
This week,
and I didn't like the universal basic income. I actually disagreed with him on that, but I didn't believe that he would ever be able to get that through legislation. And I liked the other policies that he was a part of. So I was able to take the L on the universal basic income pitch, which I didn't believe would ever pass in the first place, in order to embrace other policies, especially when he was talking about Amazon. And Andrew Yang was early on artificial intelligence and all of that stuff. He was one of the very few political candidates that was speaking on artificial intelligence, predicting what was going to happen as far as all of these layoffs and the job loss and all of that stuff. He was very much one of the early proponents as far as addressing what was going to happen in the future. But instead, y'all voted on Joe Biden.
Is crucial. The president is meeting with NATO on Thursday, when he will also hold his first solo news conference since November. Today, he met with the Congressional Black Caucus to shore up support. Tomorrow, Democrats in the Senate and House will meet behind closed doors. No cell phones allowed to talk about a path for the party going forward.
Bottom line is just wait till this week. Give it another week. It's only been a week. And what, 3 days? 3 or 4 days?
You said give it another week. So are you keeping an open mind on whether you want to see the president step aside in this race?
My
wait till
thing
the
is to
Democratic
find out
National
what
Convention.
direction that the president is going to go. He's said very clearly what he wants to do and what he will do.
But the clock is ticking. There are just 42 days before the Democratic National Convention. So far, at least 6 Democrats have come out publicly calling for Biden to step down.
I wish he would make the right decision, but since he hasn't, and because of my bedrock belief that we can do better with a different candidate, not just a little better, a lot better, I got to speak up and just make the plea.
There's plenty of time to have a conversation about what the alternative would mean. And I think at the end of the day, regardless of what people are saying today, if Joe Biden stays in this race, we will have a unified Democratic Party. In no small measure, thanks to the opposition being Donald Trump.
Polling shows very little movement in the president's support. A New York Times poll found 91% of Democrats supported Biden before the debate, 90% after. Before the debate, 45% of Democrats wish they had a different nominee. That number at 47 after the debate.
So if the polls are correct, all right, which I've learned not to trust the polls because the polls said a whole lot of stuff before Donald Trump won, and then it said a whole lot of stuff before Biden won. Most of the polls and most people were predicting that Donald Trump was going to lose when he won, and most of the polls and a lot of the people were predicting that Donald Trump was going to win when he lost. So I don't go based off of the polls in order to make a decision. And I think a lot of times we depend on these polls and we use these polls in order to validate whether or not we're going to participate or not because we get comfortable and next thing you know, somebody is getting kicked out of office or whatever, right? But if these polls be true, then that tells me that most people, regardless of how old he is or what the debate performances were, which I already predicted, had already made up their mind that they was going to vote one way or the other. Because the vote isn't whether or not is not whether or not Biden is competent. The vote is all based off of the idea that either you believe in Donald Trump or you believe that he got better policies or you don't like him. People are not voting for Biden when they vote Biden. They're voting against Donald Trump. Let me say that once again. People are not voting for Biden that is voting for Biden. The overwhelming majority of them. Most people are voting against Trump or voting against the Republican Party. If you ask anybody, I've had plenty of people come up on this panel and come up on this show. And I said, okay, listen, you voting for Biden? Yeah, man. Well, why are you voting for Biden? 9.5 out of 10 times they say, well, I don't like that other guy. Or I'm voting for the lesser of two evils. Or, well, Trump said, and how could I ever vote for Trump? They never say a policy, a protection, money that they've made, money that they've saved in taxes, how the economy is better, whether or not the migrant crisis is affecting their lives, sanctuary cities, CHIPS Act, the fact that Biden kept tariffs in place that Trump instituted in the first place while then speaking against it, Medicare, Medicaid, healthcare costs, jobs, layoffs. They don't say any of that. They don't speak to any policy. As a matter of fact, I would tell you that most voters are uneducated and they don't even know what the policies are that Biden has instituted while he was in office. They can't tell you what the infrastructure deal included, which included the very thing that y'all say that y'all don't want, electric cars, and the infrastructure that has largely failed as far as us funding what this infrastructure bill is supposed to be, as far as building up our roads, our bridges, and then ultimately the infrastructure that allows for smart cars, artificial intelligence, and electric cars to be able to thrive on American roads. Failed miserably. Don't know where all of the money is, but it absolutely is funded. And included in a lot of these bills be funding for Ukraine, Taiwan, and all of that. But then we talk about the CHIPS Act. Most people have no clue what happened the last 3.5 years that this man is in office, but they're not voting for him. They're voting against his opponent. So they're already biased, and it doesn't matter if Biden was 103 and he couldn't even mumble 3 words in his mouth. They're going to vote based off of their heart, not based off of their policies. Even Biden himself told you. He said, listen, I want to restore integrity back into the office of the President of the United States of America. And it's about how people feel. Just my opinion anyways, regardless of what the polls say. So, anyways, let me pivot for a minute, and I'm going to read that super chat, and then we're going to go over to Trump, all right, because I want to cover both. Doug Dub says, good morning, side question. Is there a way to offset capital gains taxes from selling stocks? If it's in a Patreon, let me know. I'm a member. Stay blessed. I do not believe, personally, I could do some research. I do not believe that there's an offset of capital gains taxes from selling stocks. Now, the one benefit that you have is that capital gains taxes is much less than regular income taxes, okay? But on the flip side, you're only paying capital gains on the profits. So I don't believe that there's a way, but ultimately, I don't ever really try to sell it. I get into a stock for long term, and then I just let it compound over a period of time, and then you'll eventually you'll eventually have to pay the capital gains taxes. But that's a completely different conversation, phenomenal question. Make sure y'all tap into the Patreon. I can address that in the Patreon if you guys want me to. For Stock Club on Thursday. All right, let's pivot and let's talk about Putin and Trump and war and final VP picks. I'm going to try to spend 7 minutes / 10 minutes on this. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notifications, tap into Tej Hanley, 40% off your first order plus 20% off of life, and then tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. This is